In this lesson, we're going to look at multiples of 10, 100, and 1000, and look at how we can do mental maths with facts of using tens, 100s, and thousands. So multiples of 10 always have 1 0 after them, like 10, like 80, like 110, 120, 130, etc. Numbers are multiples of 100 if they have 2 zeros at the end, like 100, 200, 1200, or 1200. You could say that number either way. And numbers are multiples of 1000 when they have 3 zeros at the end. That means that they are divisible, 1000 divides evenly into those numbers. So again, we're going to do some mental math skills using those multiples. So let's take a look at the addition examples. If I do 40 plus 30, I can think of that as 4 plus 3 gives me 7. So 40 plus 30 must give me 70. 80 plus 50, because they both have the same number of zeros, I can just ignore the zeros for a minute, add the 8 and 5 and get 13 and stick a 0 at the end. 600 plus 200 will give me 800. 400 plus 700 gives me 1100 or 1100. 1000 plus 8000 gives me 9000. 9000 plus 9000 9000 plus 5000 gives me 14,000. For subtraction, we work the same way. Notice that all of these questions have the same number of zeros with them, okay? That's important for doing this method where we just kind of ignore the 0 and stick it back on later. So 90 minus 70 is like 9 minus 7, but with a 0 at the end, so I have 20. 140 minus 80 is like 14 minus 8, which is 6, but with a 0 at the end because it's 6 tens if you want. 600 minus 200, 400. 1,500, if you think of that as 1,500 minus 700, that might make it easier to recognize that's going to give me 800. And 8,000 minus 5,000 will give me 3,000. And 14,000 minus 5,000 gives me 9,000. Multiplication can also be done very quickly mentally this way. So, for instance, if I have 80 times 6, I can ignore the 0 for a minute, and I can go 8 times 6, which is 48. But there's an extra 0 or an extra 10 there, so I just stick that on at the end. Okay? If I look at B, I have 90 times 50. I can just multiply 9 times 5 to get 45, and there's 2 zeros, so I'm going to add them both. Question C, 400 times 70. Just look at 4 times 7, which is 28, and then I need to tag on 100 for those 2 zeros and a 10 for that, so I'm adding on 3 more zeros. So my answer is 28,000. So for multiplication, just multiply the digit part and then tack on the number of zeros from the ends of both of those numbers to your product or your answer. Dividing is a little bit trickier, and the easiest way to think of doing it is to think about how to reverse it to get a multiplication question. So, for instance, 160 divided by 4, I can think of it first as 16 divided by 4 gives me 4. And now I need to turn it into a multiplication question. So 4 times what? Like how many zeros will I need on there to get 160 as my answer? Well, the 160 is a 16 with only 1 0 on the end. So I'm going to have just 1 0 there. So 160 divided by 4 is 40. Likewise, if I go to question B, 560 divided by 70, I can think what's 56 divided by 7? It's 8. and then I need to plan for how many zeros are going to be there. So I turn it into a multiplication question. 70, I'm going to just switch colors here a second. 70 times 8 gives me 7 times 8, which is 56, with 1 0 on the end, 560. So there's no zeros to add here, okay? So I'm always turning it into a multiplication question to see how many zeros there might be on my answer. If I go to the further questions here, so question C, 4,500 divided by 5. Think of it as 45 divided by 5 is 9. And now 5 times 9, to get to the 4,500, I need 2 zeros on here. Okay, so I'm always turning it back into a multiplication question. Once I know what the first number or two is going to be, to decide how many zeros to add, I turn it into multiplication. So I've got 28 divided by 4 gives me 7. 40 times 7 gives me 280, because there's only 1 0 here. So to get the extra 0, I need an extra 0 on my answer. So it's going to be 70. 2,700 divided by 900, well, 27 divided by 9 is 3. 900 times 3 will be 2,700, so I don't need to add any zeros to that question. So the division ones are just a little bit trickier, and I find the easiest way to get the correct number of zeros is to turn it into a multiplication question and check the answer. And that's it for this lesson.